First thing we can do is gain insight. When we understand something, it loses its power over us, and we're not afraid of it anymore. When we understand it, it's not as frightening, and we know what to do about it. And that insight is available to us by paying attention to our experiences. And the way I learned about this is I was living in an artist retreat with my wife, and we had artists from all over the world coming, and I really got to understand the art world. And artists have the highest incidence of bipolar of anyone. Poets, artists, writers, musicians, we have it more than any. And I found this artist is my favorite. Anybody heard of James Turrell? One person, 2, 3. Wow, this is incredible. I've had 3 people out of 600 say they heard of this guy. If you all go to your local museum and ask them if they heard of James Turrell, every single one of them has. The public never heard of this guy. You can find him online, Turrell. The reason everybody hasn't heard of him is because he doesn't paint a pretty picture that hangs on the wall here. What he does is more perceptual art. He would take this room, for example, and block off all the windows so there's no light coming in. And he would place objects in the room. And when you came in this room, it's so dark that you couldn't even see the objects in the room. And you would think it was a stupid exhibit and leave. But the people who stay see one of the most wonderful things they've ever seen in their life. Their eyes start to open more than ever because they're striving to see something. And they start recognizing that he put stuff in the room. And when they walk out into the world, they start seeing things that were there all along. They never noticed them. They call it the art of seeing, the art of perception. He teaches people that if you would just look, you would see things that were there all along that you never looked at. Well, I was depressed. I was in one of those month-long crying in bed kind of depressions. And I was thinking about James Turrell. And I thought, I had done an artwork like him my whole life too. Just like him, I blocked everything out here. Unlike him, I didn't do it out here. I did it in here. They call it meditating. I lived in a monastery for several years. I meditated 8 hours a day like it was a career. So I developed a really strong skill of looking within, blocking everything else out and all the extraneous thoughts and really paying attention inside. What would happen if I applied that skill to depression? Would I see things that were there all along? Would I understand them? And a major breakthrough happened for me. I came to realize that everyone is depressed sooner or later. We all have ups and downs. If we don't have ups and downs, life is boring. It has no meaning. It's not worth living. It's normal for us to have ups and downs. And those ups and downs have some pretty clear objects in the room. Sometimes our energy's low, sometimes our mind isn't as well as it could be, sometimes we're emotionally a little distraught, sometimes we have some spiritual conflicts, but they're within a range that's comfortable for us. But remember, we're told that we can't even live in that range. Well, everyone sooner or later gets to the next level. They call it situational depression. Something happens to us. We lose a spouse, we lose a loved one, a tragedy happens in our lives, and we go to a level of depression that is so intense we think we can't handle it. It has very clear objects in the room. We're obsessed with the thing that happened. We can't stop thinking about it. We're overly crying all the time and overly emotional. We have no energy. We can barely even get out of bed. And our mind keeps going, why did this happen to me? What's going on? We start wondering if there's a God or not, and we start dealing with things on all of those levels. But somehow we pull ourselves out of bed and have some coffee, and we drag ourselves to work, and we don't work as good as we used to, but everybody knows about the thing that happened, and they feel sorry for us, and they support us through it. And that can last a couple of years sometimes with a real tragedy, or even longer. That's a normal part of life that we all sooner or later have, so we can kind of relate to that. But we, the truly depressed, the clinically depressed, go to a whole nother place that normal people never will. The mental part is so much more extreme, it's unbelievable. Our minds keep going, kill yourself. Nobody likes you. You have no value. And we can't even remember a time when it wasn't like that. It seems like it was that way forever. Mentally, the emotional parts are so strong we can't deal with them. Physically, we're wasted. We can't possibly get out of bed because we're in so much pain. Spiritually, we start going through real spiritual crises. And those around us think we're being lazy. They think we're using it as an excuse. We're tolerating something that is unbelievably powerful. And when we understand it, we start to recognize that the first time I was ever depressed, it really wasn't that bad compared to later. But I thought it was the hardest thing in the world because it was unfamiliar. Now that I'm used to it, those states are easy. Why should I be afraid of normal ups and downs? Those are the easy states. I've been to a lot worse. Well, turns out that when other people go through situational stuff, they turn to us because we're willing to talk about it, because we're familiar with it. We find out that we're actually strong enough to deal with those kinds of states pretty well. We're not so bad at it. We're still afraid of the deeper, but generally because we haven't really looked at it yet. So that type of insight makes us understand something that few people ever will. It's frightening to look, but if we don't look, we live in fear of it for the rest of our lives, hoping that it'll never happen again, when we know darn well it's going to happen again, because that's part of our condition. So avoiding it's never going to work. Making it go away is never going to work, but understanding it is going to take its power away.